They say in 1853, the Callahan attic was locked from the outside, and inside were 39 children. No one ever saw them alive again. The townsfolk swore they heard scratching from behind the walls for weeks. Others heard singing. What happened inside that attic was buried for over a century. And tonight, you'll hear the secret the Callahans tried to take to their graves. But I warn you, once you know, you'll never sleep in the dark again. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I've spent the last 6 months digging through archives, parish records, and rotting court documents from a forgotten corner of Massachusetts. And every trail, every whisper of rumor led me back here, to the Callahan House. It sits on the edge of Briar Hollow, where the mist never seems to lift, and the crows never stop circling. Most of the town's history is written neatly in books, but this part is missing, torn out. Because in the summer of 1853, a wealthy family named Callahan locked 39 children inside their attic and told no one why. No trial, no justice, just silence. Until a fire in the county records office revealed a single charred ledger, one that hinted at why. And what I found in those pages should have stayed buried. The Callahan House stands where the road ends and the woods begin. Even from a distance, it doesn't just look abandoned, it looks wrong. The kind of wrong your instincts feel before your mind understands it. The first time I saw it, the fog was clinging to the ground, curling around the brittle grass like pale fingers. The iron gate leaned to one side, its hinges eaten away by rust, groaning in the wind like something alive. Beyond it, a stone path wound up the hill, half buried in weeds and choked by thorn bushes. Every few feet, the land seemed to swallow sound. No bird calls, no crickets, no wind in the leaves. Just the heavy silence that presses on your chest. And then, there was the house itself, as if the glass itself had forgotten how to catch the light. At the very top, tucked under the steep pitch of the roof, was the attic window. Small, squared, set deep into the wood, like a lid on a coffin. It was there, they say. The children pressed their faces against the glass, watching, waiting, mouthing words no one could hear. As I climbed the slope, my boots crunched on gravel and frost-bitten leaves. Every step felt like trespassing. Up close, the shadows clung to the corners of the porch, dense and unmoving. Somewhere, deep inside, a floorboard creaked. It wasn't the kind of sound wood makes when it settles. It was the sound of weight. And though I was still outside, I knew the Callahan House already knew I was there. Briar Hollow is the kind of place where people talk, but not to strangers. On my first day there, I stopped at a small tavern by the main road. The sign outside swung in the wind. Its paint faded so badly, you could barely read the name. Inside, the air was warm with the smell of wood smoke and cheap ale. But the moment I stepped in, the room went quiet. Not silent in a friendly, curious way. Silent, like I had just stepped onto sacred or cursed ground. I sat at the bar and ordered coffee. The bartender, a wiry man with deep lines around his eyes, didn't look at me when he poured it. I told him I was here to learn about the old Callahan House. His hands froze for a second, the liquid sloshing slightly in the cup. He set it down in front of me, leaned in, and whispered, "Best thing you can do is leave it alone." But he wasn't the only one who knew something. That night, I wandered just slightly toward the center, as if gossip itself pulled them in. In a corner near the church, I found two older women huddled together, their shawls pulled tight, eyes darting around before they spoke. One of them said the Callahans were cursed, that generations ago they'd made a bargain with something not human. The other swore that she'd heard singing from the attic window late at night, decades after the children were gone. They spoke in low tones, disappearing, but every so often, their voices cracked, like even saying the words out loud was dangerous. An old man sitting nearby joined in, uninvited. His skin was weathered, like old paper, and he had that look people get when they've seen too much. "I was a boy when they found the attic," he rasped. "They said the children starved, but that ain't the truth." When I pressed him, he just stared past me. Still had blood on their lips. The words hung in the cold air, heavier than smoke. And then, as quickly as the conversation had begun, it died. The villagers turned away, retreating into their homes, slamming shutters closed with an urgency I couldn't ignore. The last thing I saw, before the street went empty, was a little girl standing in a doorway, her hair the color of ash. She raised one hand, pointed toward the hill where the Callahan house stood in the distance. Its attic window just visible through the fog. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I already knew she was warning me. Stop. It was the night of August 17th, 1853. The town slept under a heavy summer heat, the kind that makes the air thick and unmoving. But on the hill, the Callahan house glowed with the faint orange of candlelight, flickering through the warped glass windows. Most nights, the Callahans kept to themselves, but that night, there was movement. From the road below, a farmhand named William Price swore he saw shadows, small ones, moving in a slow, single-file line toward the house. The figures were children, their heads bowed, each holding the hand of the one in front. No laughter, no chatter, just the shuffling of bare feet on the dirt path. At the head of the line was a tall man in a dark coat. His face was hidden under the brim of a wide hat. Beside him, a woman in a high-necked dress clutched a brass lantern, its lights swinging wildly as they climbed the slope. The children didn't look left or right, not even when the wind caught their hair. The front doors of the Callahan house groaned open, spilling warm candlelight into the night. The procession entered. The doors shut, and then silence. Hours later, a neighbor, Mrs. Harrow, woke to the sound of a carriage approaching her house. She peeked out through her upstairs window and saw the same man in the dark coat. Only now, his lantern was out, and he was alone. He walked beside the carriage without speaking. The carriage itself was odd. No horses. Its wheels squealed like they were rusted. And though the windows were covered, Mrs. Harrow swore. She saw small hands press against the glass from inside before sliding slowly out of sight. Back at the Callahan House, in the attic, things had already begun. The door to the attic was thick oak, reinforced with iron bands. A single key, long, blackened with age. Inside, 39 children stood in the dim candlelight. Some clutched dolls or wooden toys. Others simply stared at the floor. The air was stifling, smelling of dust and something sweet, like spoiled fruit. The woman with the lantern, Mrs. Callahan herself, stepped inside, her skirts whispering against the wooden floor. She set the lantern on a crate and removed the candle from it. Her voice was calm, too calm. "You'll be safe here," she told them, "until it's over." No one asked what it was. The man in the dark coat entered last, carrying a small wooden chest. He placed it in the center of the attic and knelt beside it. When he opened it, the candlelight flickered unnaturally, bending away as though the air itself recoiled. Inside the chest was something wrapped in black cloth. The boy stepped back without another word. Then, the attic door closed. The lock turned. From outside, the wind picked up, rattling the loose shutters. Inside, the candle burned lower and lower, until the only light was from the sliver of moon through the attic window. And that's when the noises began. First, the soft tap of something moving in the walls. Then, a scratching, faint at first, like mice, growing louder, sharper, until it sounded almost deliberate. Some children pressed their hands over their ears. Others began to hum softly, as if trying to drown it out. One girl, her eyes wide, pointed to the far corner of the attic. "There," she whispered. The shadows there didn't move with the rest of the room. They stayed perfectly still, until they didn't. A figure began to emerge from the darkness, thin, impossibly tall. The attic was never meant for living things. It was cramped, the air so dry it clung to the back of your throat. Wooden beams crisscrossed the low ceiling, heavy with cobwebs that trembled whenever anyone moved. Dust floated in the air, catching the moonlight in lazy swirls. Every breath felt like breathing in history, not the kind you read in books, but the kind that rots in the dark. 39 children huddled together, their ages ranging from barely toddlers to nearly grown. The older ones tried to shush the younger ones, but their own hands trembled, Their own eyes darted to the corners. The shadows moved differently here. Sometimes they stretched along the floor when the moonlight shifted. Other times, they seemed to pulse, as though the darkness itself was breathing. It was Thomas who spoke first, a boy of maybe 11, his voice cracking in fear. "It's watching us," he said, his eyes fixed in the grain of the wooden planks. Faces seemed to form. Faint outlines of eyes, a mouth stretched too wide, teeth that didn't belong. When one of the girls blinked, the face was gone. But when she opened her eyes again, it was closer. The scratching grew louder. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause, as if counting. Somewhere below them, in the bowels of the house, a door slammed, the kind of slam that shakes dust loose from the ceiling. The children flinched as a fine rain of debris fell onto their hair and shoulders. Then the smell began. It wasn't the mildew of the attic anymore. It was coppery, metallic, the smell of fresh blood. The smallest children began to cry, but their voices sounded muffled, like the air itself was swallowing the sound. And then came the singing. It started softly, a single voice, until the room was filled with a chorus that didn't belong to any living throat. The older children pressed their palms over the younger ones' ears, but it didn't help. The sound seemed to come from inside their heads, echoing against their skulls. Sarah, the eldest girl, gathered the younger ones near the attic window. She tried to open it, but the frame was swollen tight. The glass, cold as ice despite the summer heat outside. Her breath fogged against it in slow, unnatural clouds. In the far corner, near the black chest, something shifted. The figure they'd seen before was crouched now, its long arms folded like the legs of a spider. Its head tilted unnaturally far to one side, as if studying them. The longer they looked at it, the harder it was to breathe, as though the air was being drained away, molecule by molecule. A boy named Henry broke from the group, charging toward the attic door. He slammed his fists against it. The wood thudded dully beneath his blows, but no one came. The figure's head snapped toward him, and in a single, jarring motion, it was standing, towering over him. The other children backed away, their feet catching on the warped floorboards, the sound of the singing rising into a feverish pitch. Then, without a sound, the figure vanished. The scratching stopped, the singing cut off. Only their breathing remained, fast, shallow, terrified, until they heard the key turn in the lock again. Secrets in small towns are like weeds. You can cut them down, but the roots always remain. And the Callahan roots went deep. I found the first real clue in an old church ledger, its pages brittle and brown. In neat ink, there was a record of a marriage in 1818. Jonathan Callahan to a woman named Elspeth Moore. No one in the town remembered her name, but the ledger had something strange in the margin. A symbol, 3 interlocking circles with a black dot at the center. It wasn't a flourish, it was deliberate. That same symbol appeared again in a different place, carved into the wood above the Callahan House's cellar door. The more I read, the clearer it became. The Callahans were not just another wealthy family. They had risen quickly, too quickly, from obscurity to power, buying land, influencing the church, history. The Callahans' infant son became gravely ill. Desperate, Jonathan Callahan was said to have disappeared into the woods for 3 days. When he returned, the boy recovered overnight. The townsfolk asked questions. Jonathan offered no answers. But after that winter, strange things began to happen. Livestock born deformed, children vanishing in the night, the church refusing to ring its bells after sundown. It was Elspeth, the wife, who people feared most. They said she knew old languages, older than the Bible, that she kept jars in the cellar, jars that rattled and whispered, even when sealed. And then there was the collection. In the attic, hidden beneath a false floorboard, authorities later found rows of small wooden figures, each carved with that same 3-circle court testimonies that never saw daylight, and one particularly disturbing diary entry from a house servant named Mary Finn. In her shaky handwriting, she wrote, "The mistress says they are not to leave. She says the ones below will come for them soon, and that the children will be fed and clothed until the moon is black. She tells the master that this is the price for what they gave us, and that he must be strong enough to bear the sounds in the night." Mary Finn disappeared a week after that entry. The more I read, the more I realized the attic wasn't a prison. It was an offering. The Callahans believed they owed a debt, one paid not in gold, but in lives. And for reasons lost to time, they chose that summer night in 1853 to pay it in full. The townsfolk knew something was wrong. They knew the Callahans were dangerous, but fear is a powerful silencer. And so, the shadows stayed fed, and the Callahans, for a time, thrived, until the following winter, when the last of them died suddenly, their bodies found twisted in their beds, as though something had come for them at last. The house stood empty after that, the wind whispering through its broken walls, carrying voices that didn't belong to the living. But the symbol, the 3 circles with the black dot, that still waits above the cellar door. The Callahan attic stayed locked for 6 days after the children vanished inside. On the 7th day, the authorities came, not out of courage, but because the smell had reached the road. 4 men approached the house that morning: Sheriff Elias Boone, 2 deputies, and a local carpenter named Alcott, who had the strongest arms in Briar Hollow. They brought lanterns and iron crowbars, and each one carried a Bible pressed tightly under his coat. The front door gave way too easily, swinging open into a hall thick with dust and silence. The air inside was colder than the frost outside. They moved through the house in uneasy formation, boots creaking on warped floorboards, lanterns casting long, uneasy shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Somewhere above, something shifted. The sound was faint, but deliberate. The kind of noise that makes a man grip his weapon tighter. The attic door was at the end of the third-floor hallway. It was locked, the heavy iron bolt sealed with a strange, waxy residue. The symbol of the 3 circles was carved into the wood, deep enough that the grooves were blackened with age. Alcott raised his crowbar and struck. The door shuddered, but did not open. He struck again and again. The wax cracked, the bolt gave way, and the door swung inward. The men stepped inside and froze. There were the children, or what was left of them. They were seated in a perfect circle around the black chest. Their eyes were open, glassy, staring at nothing. Their lips were stained dark, as though they had been drinking ink or something far worse. Some still held hands. Others had their heads tilted back, mouths slightly open as if mid-song. The smallest, a boy no more than 4. The floorboards beneath them were marked with deep, claw-like gouges, arranged in spirals that led inward toward the chest. Sheriff Boone took one step forward, and the chest rattled. The sound was small, like bones shifting in a box. None of the men spoke. One of the deputies turned and ran, stumbling down the stairs, his lantern crashing behind him. The others stood rooted to the spot until Boone finally whispered, "Close it. Seal it. Never open it again." They left the attic as they had found it, the children in their silent circle, the chest at the center, the cold moonlight watching from above. The house was locked, the key thrown into the river, and no official report was ever written. Period. Over a century and a half has passed since the attic was sealed. Most people in Briar Hollow pretend it never happened. The Callahan name has been erased from records, their portraits burned, their land boundaries quietly redrawn. The house itself was left to rot, but it never collapsed. Storms have stripped its paint, vines have strangled its porch, and frost has split its walls. Yet the structure still stands, watching the town from its lonely hill. Some say the wood refuses to fall because something inside is holding it up. In 1972, a group of teenagers broke into the house on a dare. They never made it past the second floor. One of them, a boy named Richard McKay, was found on the front lawn at dawn, barefoot, shivering, and unable to speak. His friends were never found. In 1998, a paranormal research team tried to document the attic. They brought high-resolution cameras, EMF meters, and a priest. Within 12, the team ran out into the night, leaving their equipment behind. One member later told a reporter that they had heard the sound of children singing from behind the attic door, and that the priest had dropped his Bible. And just last year, a local real estate developer purchased the property at auction. He intended to tear the house down. But when the demolition crew arrived, they refused to go inside. The foreman said the moment he stepped onto the porch, the temperature dropped, and he heard scratching from above, from the attic. I stood at the bottom of the hill, staring up at the Callahan house. The attic window was dark, or at least, I thought it was. The wind shifted, and for the briefest moment, something moved behind the glass. A shape, small, pale, pressed its face against the pane. Too far away to see clearly, but close enough for me to feel the weight of its gaze. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but then the window fogged over from the inside. And in that fog, a single small handprint appeared, followed by another and another, until the entire window was a wall of tiny hands, pressing outward. I took a step back. From somewhere deep within the house came a sound, faint at first, like wind through a crack, but it grew louder, sharper, until I realized it was the same pattern the children had heard in 1853. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. The sound carried down the hill, following. The attic window was black again. But as I drove out of Briar Hollow, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Every few miles I swore I saw that window, impossibly close, as if the house was moving with me. And tonight, as I tell you this, I can still hear it. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. If you ever find yourself in Briar Hollow, don't go near the hill after dark. And if you see the attic window glowing, don't look up.